certainly hope this little incident hasn't put you off flying, miss. Statistically speaking, of course, it's still the safest way to travel.
Let's go. But inconspicuously. Through the window.
And here we go. What is up, everyone? Welcome to DC Standom, your guided tour of the DC multiverse. I'm your host, Mike Cicchini, the editor-in-chief of denofgeek.com. And each week, I'm bringing you discussions with writers, artists, actors, and experts, covering everything from DC Comics to the movies and TV that make up the DCU. This week, we have an in-depth conversation with Jeremy Adams, writer of DC's brand new Green Lantern title, and who is currently bringing to a close an epic run on Wally West with The Flash, and who has another Flash-centric title on the horizon in October with a book focused on Jay Garrick. As we record this, it is actually Green Lantern #1 release date, is it not?
I know, it's crazy. A lot of fear-based emotions going on here.
Were there fear-based emotions when you were first offered, as high-profile a character as Hal Jordan, just as you were wrapping up a massive Flash run?
Yeah, it was a combination of sorrow and excitement. And I'm one of those people, I get kind of myopic, and I remember being like, oh, I'm so sad, and kind of down on myself. And then we were driving to my in-laws, which is like 3 hours away or something. And I got in the car. I talked to Jeff Johns, who was just like, this is awesome. Evidently, I'm on the Jeff Johns track for some reason. I don't know what's going on, but he was super pumped. And by the time I got to my in-laws, I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, what the story was I wanted to tell. And then I started getting really excited about it.
Let's talk about that story. And it's funny that you mentioned Jeff Johns, because Jeff, to me, was the writer who really just foregrounded the outer space elements of Green Lantern, like more than they ever had been, in my lifetime when I was reading the book. But now with your book, it's an Earthbound setting, at least at the start. It feels to me a little bit more like kind of like that post-crisis early 90s Green Lantern run, which is where I really kind of first fell in love with the character. So why don't you tell me about, placing Hal back on Earth and everything that comes along with that?
Paul Kaminsky, who's my editor, said that they really wanted to get to kind of a back to the basics, Hal on Earth idea. And I had a pitch, I don't know, a while ago that it fit perfectly. It was kind of a thought I had in my head, and I kind of built it out, because just him being on Earth is not a story in itself. So it's like, why is he on Earth? How does he stay on? Because I'm like you. I think the temptation I have, because I grew up reading, Jeff Johns' Green Lantern and Tomasi's like Green Lantern Corps, like that 1-2 punch that was just out, and it was every month. Was just like, this is awesome. This is Star Wars and Star Trek combined, and it was incredible. And I think the temptation for me, at least, would be, it's great here. I gotta go, and that would just be my temptation. So putting some constraints on that and how that actually relates to a story became really fun. And it also forced me to focus a little more on Hal's character and what Hal's doing. And I remember the first thought I had was, I wonder how much Hal has in his bank account. Like, that was the first thought. Like, he's been caught for so much. What does he have, $13 in his bank account? What's going on? And that kind of helped me think about what it's like to just come home again. What it's like to come, he's been leading and patrolling and, fighting cosmic forces for a long time. And the mundane of Earth, or at least, I think presupposed mundane, it's got to be hard. And the woman that he really loves, that's been on and off again because of the tumultuous nature of his occupation, is moving on. And he has to struggle with, like, I like her. I'm kind of pursuing her, but at the same time, is it right for me to do so? Is it right for me to put her in this situation, into a relationship that's as volatile as it is? So those are some of the kind of character questions I want to move forward in the book. But anytime you take on one of these characters, at least this is like my second time really being able to touch one of the bigger characters. And I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, I'm excited about it, but I am very well aware of the pressure that's involved.
I feel like there's a certain natural synergy is not the right word. I'm a writer. I should know words, and I'm not knowing them very well right now. But there's a certain, I don't know, almost like a parallel track with Flash and Green Lantern. I feel like
Yeah.
those characters, for as different as they are, and they each come with so much mythology and can just completely populate an entire superhero universe unto themselves, right?
Yeah.
But there is something that has always made those two characters fit well together. And it's not just the color schemes, but and I can't put my finger on it, but for
I
some
think
reason, it makes you going from Flash to Green Lantern feel like a natural thing.
yeah.
But I don't know if there's any way you can elaborate on this
Yeah.
connection or if I'm just imagining it.
No. I think they're kind of everymen in a way. It's not like, their trauma and their road to superherodom didn't start early age, like Wonder Woman, Batman, or Superman. Like they've always had, kind of, well, at least with Batman, his like determination to become this thing happened very early. And Superman obviously was born with it. And then Wonder Woman was born with it. There's this kind of element of like they're born into this godhood in a way, right? Whereas Hal Jordan and Barry or Wally, that came later. That they had somewhat traditional, upbringings. I know that Hal had the trauma of his father's death, but that's everyday life. He didn't get the chance to become the Green Lantern until much, much later. So I don't know. I always feel like there's a relatability. There's a certain amount of humanity to them that some often is overlooked or not necessarily touched upon with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Not to say they don't have humanity. It's just they have to deal with all these other things around them. So there's a little bit of like, oh, they're just dudes, even if Barry is, a scientist and works for the police department, he's still a dude. He doesn't have $1 billion in the bank. He's not bulletproof, all that stuff. I think that's that nature versus nurture argument. But that's why I feel like there is some sort of relatability. What you're picking up on is something that I've thought about, is that Hal is this kind of overconfident schlub in a way, but he does have this amazing heart and he's very self-confident. But there are certain things in his life that, for such a self-confident person, I think looking around and seeing the world moving on without him is a blow to his ego in a lot of ways. He was, back in the day, being a hotshot test pilot, all that stuff, it's great, but as you see in issue number 1, the world's moved on a bit. Like that's almost like being like, I was the best buggy driver that it ever existed. And people are like, buggy driver? No one uses buggies.
This issue has, a lot of Hal and it has a lot of Carol, but there's no Guardians. They're only kind of referred to, obviously.
Right.
The Manhunters are, kind of there in spirit with, with the antagonist who's briefly introduced in this issue.
Right.
It seems like there is like a very even the way Hal confronts that guy is very kind of direct and non-powered and at least
Right.
initially. So what is your mission here? Like how far back do you want to strip Green Lantern back to the essential qualities of Hal before you start bringing back other elements of Green Lantern mythology? And I'm sorry if that comes off like a loaded question. It's not my intention.
No. I mean, listen, the reality is, even when I was dealing with the Flash, the amount of mythology and massive continuity and all that stuff that existed in the Flash was a lot. And, I think Green Lantern might be a little more complicated in some ways. But my belief is, in order for the reader to come along for all that mythology that potentially will come, and I say potentially, is they've got to care about the character. And I saw this very, there's a lot of Green Lanterns. There's a lot of Green Lanterns 2814. And for some reason, people really started hating Hal. And I always felt like it was my mission statement to be like, I want you guys to like this guy. I want you to like him so much that when we start introducing pieces of that mythology back in, you care, because because without caring about him, no one's going to care about the mythology. You can do it all, blue in your face. It's not going to matter, at least to me. And I think the mythology is grand. And I also think that at the end of Jeff Thorne's run, there's a lot of loose threads that as a writer are great jumping off points to create other stories. And he was doing this like dynamic, high sci-fi, epic thing. And I am definitely doing a little more grounded, but also with a lot of mystery that's going to just be peeled back over and over, and hopefully not like an onion so you're crying at the end, but I mean just that we start uncovering things, because I've seen people talking today. It's like, oh, how is his ring charged? It's like, that's a good question that we're going to explore. How, where are the Guardians? Well, I don't know. I have ideas. There's a lot of loose threads. And what's great about it is talking with like Philip, who's doing the backup issue that's going to lead into his John Stewart. He's got some amazingly dynamic ideas, and hopefully we both want to weave into each other on and off as we go forward. But right now it's about Hal on Earth and the consequences of quarantining 2814, and how they're separated from who were ostensibly his family. And just on a smaller level is just like, you want what you can't have in a way too. And it's like, yeah, he's Green Lantern and he's getting back in the groove. I'm excited about being able to use Hal in a way that he gets to interact with heroes, because I don't know the last time, other than like the big, like, okay, Dark Crisis, here they are, but they're usually surrounded by other Green Lanterns. But like, I want to see him have a conversation with Ollie. I want to see him have a conversation with Barry. I want him to have kind of these interactions with other heroes, because I'm a huge nerd. And I want to play with the action figures. It's like he's on Earth now, and it's just I think it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be interesting, and there's a lot of mystery involved. So hopefully people stick around long enough to kind of explore that, or interested enough to explore it.
Well, let's talk about playing with the action figures, because your Flash run, obviously it's a Wally run, and you started off like with a very Wally centric story. But of course, Flash, there's so many speed units, speed. What did they call them? The biological conduits of the Speed Force, right?
Yeah.
There's so many of those around. It's inevitably going to become a Flash family book, right? But like, you really built to that. Like, by the time we got to 1 Minute War, which was like a real crescendo, and like honestly one of the best like big Flash family stories I've read in I don't know how long.
Thank you.
Do you see a similar track with Green Lantern, where a year or two down the road there are more of the familiar, especially the 2814 Green Lanterns, all coming together in a big way? Or are you not even? You're just focused on making people.
I have a very long term. Unfortunately, because I'm weird like that, I have a very long term plan. But who knows? After issue 1 comes out and issue 2 craters in sales, I do have a really long-term goal to a bigger story, because I definitely want to stay on Earth for a while, and I want to get us comfortable there, and I want to get us comfortable with Hal and hopefully guest stars and stuff. And then I want to start unraveling a lot of what's happening out there, and I think it'll be that much more meaningful. I remember, do you remember when, in Marvel, when the Illuminati sent the Hulk away? And I remember thinking, that is the coolest thing. He's gone. He's off the board for a year. And I thought the same thing in Justice League International, when they like made Guy Gardner a pacifist for a long time. That sense of catharsis when we finally do open up the outer sphere, is, I think, going to be really cool if everything I want to happen happens. I mean, and regardless, it's like I'm super excited about these small moments and these character moments and stuff. And Zermanico is just killing it when it comes to that.
Yes.
Like, he's doing it in a way that, I mean, I knew he would, because Flashpoint Beyond, every time he'd send back art, I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy's so good. But I can't wait to do some more bombastic things and more things that I hope that he gets excited about. Not that he's not excited, he seems to be, but I want to push him too. I want to be like, oh, as I said, Zermanico is the ring. Like I get to create a construct by going like, I want it to be like this. And then he's like, and he puts it out there. So I don't have to use that much willpower, which is great. But it's exciting to see him bring his ability. And if you watch that guy's art career, it's just, how I got lucky for him to be on, I'll never know. But I'm very, very grateful. But yes, I want to move out. But I want to start small and work big. I think it worked for the Flash. I think it's important as we do the dawn of DCU, and that we're concentrating on one character. It's going to make those other characters mean so much when we bring them in and get to spend a little more time with them, instead of them just being a nameless face in the crowd.
And if this is a little bit of a spoiler, forgive me. But is the goat okay from issue number 1?
You know what? You'll see. I think yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was so funny. I had written in there, and then Zermanico set the pages, and I like howled, and then I also felt kind of bad for the fictional goat. So
yeah, I just needed confirmation that the goat is okay.
Goats, I mean, listen, if you ever watch one of those Earth documentaries, you'll see like a goat fall off a cliff, and then they get up and they're like, what's up? Like they're fine.
We have to move on to Flash in a minute, but I have one more GL question, because it just goes back to something you said a couple minutes ago about people not liking Hal, and I wonder how much of that is because there have been definitive great Hal stories in the comics, but there has never been a definitive Hal story in other media. Whereas with John, like everybody loves John, not just from the comics, but because John was so amazing on, Justice League Unlimited and things like that. I know it's not your fault, and it's not really your it's not really your remit here, but I just wonder like how much of that is just a matter of kind of perception, where Hal can be kind of elevated again to the point that the character who is, I mean, look, that was the action figure guy when I was a kid. So
no, listen, I mean, whether it's an unreal perception or not, it's just a perception that is out there, and it's something you have to contend with as a writer, because you're like, no, this is a superhero. This is a good guy. There's a reason the ring went to him, and it's not just that he has tons of willpower. And I think it's a very important piece of the puzzle to get people excited about this guy again. Again, he's, he always comes in and it's like, oh, look, it's Hal Jordan, the greatest Green Lantern, but I need to know why I care about that Green Lantern. They did that really effectively with Kyle growing up. I was like, I get who this kid is.
Yes.
He's a kid, he's a guy that does art and blah, blah, blah. I get it with Guy even. It's like, I hate him, but I love him, and so my goal is just to remind people why you should care about Hal. Because originally when comics came out, it was very much like characters were just ciphers, right? They were square jawed, like, yes, I'm good at what I do, blah blah blah. And so as we gotten older, and the industry gotten older, the craft's gotten older, we've wanted to get a little more nuance in the character of them. And I just think Hal's very fascinating because, again, he can be a hothead, but he's also saved the universe countless times. He's worked for God, for goodness sake. Like he has to have a bigger perspective at this point in a way. And I think when that bigger perspective juts up against your natural tendency to, be stubborn and willful, that makes for interesting drama. So we'll see.
I also take back what I said about Hal not really being the best served in other media, because that Green Lantern animated series was way underrated.
See, come on now, you're right. That was my first credit in television, and
oh really?
Yep. And
I love that show.
It was such a fun show, and I got to do 2 of them, and it was fun. Jim Krieg, who's my mentor, was running that show along with Giancarlo and Ernie Altbacker. And I remember walking in the room, and I remember them having the characters pinned up, and over them they had like Captain Kirk was over Hal, and I thought, oh, I get it now. I get who he is. That makes more sense. And they you know, obviously they did a little derivation on him, but I get who he is in that moment. So I kind of want to pursue that. I love working on that series, and I think it is kind of the definitive Hal Jordan in my mind.
Yeah, I love it. So scratch what I said before. What do I know?
Never mind.
And that is it for this week's DC Standom. Don't forget to check out our web home at denofgeek.com, where you can find all our DC coverage at denofgeek.com/DC. Drop us a line at DC Standom on Twitter and Instagram. Give those a follow because, I don't know, maybe we'll have some surprises there. But if nothing else, let us know what you want to see and hear about in upcoming episodes. And hey, did you know that we also have a Marvel show? That's right. You can also listen to Marvel Standom wherever you're listening to this show right now. So check it out. Sometimes we do our Standoms live, so make sure you follow Den of Geek on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/denofgeektv. This has been DC Standom on the Den of Geek Network. Until next time, I'm Mike Cicchini, and remember, folks, we stand together.